Alrighty, guys, hello and welcome back to the show. Today I have someone with a lot of clout around campus with me today, involved in so much around campus, but I'll let her introduce herself a little bit further.
Welcome to the Honors Podcast.
Hi, I'm a senior, and my name is Sophia Csulak, but everyone calls me Shu.
Yeah, that's a great nickname.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
Well, I met this dude my freshman year, and he went by his last name, Shipley, and I was like, oh, well, my name's Sophia Csulak, and he was like, oh, Shulak's kind of interesting. I was like, yeah, I guess so. And then he was just like, well, I guess I'll just call you by your last name. So then I just became Csulak, and that was the thing, and then just got shortened to Shu.
Shu.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you always wear really nice Converse whenever you perform in our Charcoal Pony Club, which is our improv group on campus. So it's really fun. Do you know the etymology of Csulak?
Oh, Csulak? It's Hungarian, and it's actually pronounced Csulak. I'm probably not even putting the proper emphasis on it.
Yeah.
Only, my great-grandfather can still say it. But, I don't know, it's very thickly Hungarian, and I've only heard one person say it once right, and it was in a Lowe's, and it's because he was fluent in Hungarian. So he read, the name on, my card, and he was like, oh, Sophia, Csulak, or, however you properly say it. But I was like, that's what it sounds like.
I know the Germanic and Anglo Romance languages, they have such weird emphases. And I'm learning Czech right now on Duolingo. It's such weird emphases. And that's me coming from learning Chinese, which has 5 tonal intonations. But that makes sense. I don't understand the Latin derived, all that stuff. It's crazy, but it's so interesting. Anyway, I just always ask people's etymology of their names. It's just so interesting. So what are you studying here at High Point? What are you involved in? And we'll start with that. And what's your homeland? Where do you hail from?
Where am I from? I'm from a very small town called Monrovia, Maryland. It's a town of 1,000 people. So when I left, a lot of people noticed because it's so small. But then I came all the way here, and I'm studying English psychology and on the pre-law track. As for things that I'm involved in a lot. I'm in Charcoal Pony. I'm actually the vice president of that, which is our improv group on campus. I'm a student justice. So basically, when a student breaks the guide to campus life, they come before us, and we talk about why that's bad for the community that we have here, and then we talk about what we should do going forward to maybe help them reflect on their experience or whatever needs to be done. And I'm also in Alpha Phi Omega, which is the service fraternity on campus. I'm in a few clubs. I'm in psychology club. I'm in English club. Makes sense. My major. What else do I do? Oh, I'm in Sigma Tau Delta, which is the English honors fraternity, and then I'm also in Psychi, which is the psychology honors fraternity.
Wow, so many random, well, they're not that random, but just a lot of Greek-derived honor societies around campus.
Yeah, there's always a little pocket.
Yeah, it's so fun. Okay, English and psychology on pre-law. What's the dream there?
The dream there is I want to be a lawyer. Ideally, when I originally thought about it, I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice because I love writing and I love understanding why people work. I got into psychology because I was so fascinated by everybody. I don't get why people do the things they do. I don't get why I do the things that I do. And being on the tail end of my major, I get it now. But the dream still is to go into law, specifically because I want to understand why we set the world the way that we do and we shape it so entirely when it's just sitting there and we've put ourselves all over it. But I think psychology will help me understand people and understand what we need, especially when we don't know what we need. And then English will just help me read the laws better, communicate myself better. And it's also just an outlet. I write all the time, too. So that's also why I brought English up. Because originally I was just a psych major. And then I had a professor once that gave me a B on one of my essays. And I was like, oh, I've never gotten a B before. And she pulled me aside and she was like, yeah, this is college now, it's different. And I was so floored. I was like, I've never been bad at English. This is my outlet. You're incorrect, there's no way. And I thought about it for 2 weeks. And then she called me into her office randomly. And I was like, oh, she's gonna rip into me again. My essay, she found another thing that was wrong with it. And she sat me down and she was like, I want you to be an English major. And I was like, there's no way. You gave me a B and you rocked me. And then you were like, you should be an English major. But I picked it up, so here we are.
That's here we are. Yeah, that kind of happened to me too. Because I don't feel like anyone really comes in as an English major knowing because it's like an unspoken thing, like the benefits of it and like the applications and so many different things. So English gets a bit of a bad rap, but it's great major, great program.
It has so much usage, and I think
Yeah.
media literacy in general and how we read and communicate ourselves is
Yeah.
going down. Which I know because I think our life is getting faster with like the development of technology. So the art of like really communicating yourself like in full clear detail isn't as universal anymore. It's not as needed, but you lose so much emotion and so much like depth when we cut that out.
I was listening to a really interesting podcast a couple weeks ago about how they don't teach full books in like lower education anymore. It's only like excerpts or like articles and all that stuff. And it was becoming an issue in higher education where they would still teach full books as part of like a survey class or something. And students would just not be able to read or comprehend a full book. And it was becoming a problem. The podcast was interesting because it didn't like immediately say it was like a negative thing. It was just like dissecting it, like what are the demands of our industry today and all that stuff, and what critical thinking skills do we value more? Is it like full content comprehension or like really nitpicky analysis of a smaller excerpt? So that was just very interesting. It just made me think about that. Okay. So little town in Maryland.
Yeah.
I'm going to trump you with the small town card. My town was 456 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is very tiny.
Yeah, in the mountains of Appalachia. I'm from Georgia. Lure drop. Anyway, what was your favorite childhood food growing up in Maryland?
Ooh.
And what was like kind of your childhood experience like?
I think my childhood experience was very, I don't even know what to like call it. I just think of like when you think of like an American summer where it's very like you're outside, you hear like cars going by like in the far distance. Like I could vaguely sometimes hear like a horn blow, but it would be like a mile away. But you could hear, I lived like in the woods because it's in the middle of nowhere. So every morning you'd hear like the morning air like rustle through the leaves.
Wow.
There was always birds everywhere. And there was just like rolling hills of like blue skies and like innocent, like almost nothing ever bad ever happened. And it was like this delicate little bubble that I actually didn't notice until I got to college, that like life could be shifted out of that perfect perspective. But my summers in Maryland were very much like I woke up, I'd go on a run just around somewhere in my town. Typically, we were just like around the school that was like right next to us. And then my brothers and I would just go outside. We'd like crawl through the woods. We had like a rundown treehouse about like a mile out, like just into the woods somewhere. So we'd go find it. And it took us way too long into our childhood to like remember that like there is a path. We don't need to rediscover our way there back and forth every time. But it was just so peaceful and warm. And I think my favorite childhood food, I think it has to be my grandma's mac and cheese. She doesn't do anything like too special to it, but she like adds like a little bit of milk to it.
Yeah.
And I guess that makes it better.
Is it like classic like cheddar macaroni and cheese with like...
Yeah, with like little macaroni shapes, but she like fresh grates the cheese every time, which I think is the added step that's what makes mac and cheese better. The people that make it out of the box, like it's good still, but I think to get that really gooey, warm, like homemade one, you do need to freshly grate it.
Okay. Is it like in a pot or is this like a oven baked macaroni?
Oven baked mac and cheese.
Oven baked, absolutely.
It's
I feel like
so
grandma
good.
code is like always oven baked. Oven baked everything. They'd be like thriving off the ovens these days. Oh my gosh. My one grandma, she has two ovens, using them both all the time. And she lives in
Always pumping
Texas
out
too, so
food.
the kitchen gets hot. It's all that fun. Well, it's so great. How would you say mac and cheese and then also growing up in nature and having that like ability to roam and just run around has like influenced who you are as a person today?
I think it really encouraged me to like, it's okay to like sit with things and just kind of figure them out like on your own, because I am the middle child between two boys. So I have an older brother and a younger brother. So even though I would play with them sometimes like in the summer and we'd like run around, a lot of times too though they'd be like, oh, well, we're gonna like go play a boys game. So they would go somewhere else or they go do whatever. So I was just like alone for a good chunk. And I would just like run around again in my backyard and it was just me by myself. So I would have to talk to myself, make up games, pull inspiration from what was around me. And I think it's good because I have a solid level of okay independence, where when I'm alone or I have to work through things alone, I'm okay with it because I'm used to that. Where I'm like, the world is here though, so I'm not really alone. I have things at my grasp. And it just really encouraged me to be like curious. I think if I had the easy way out of like always have someone to like bounce off of, I would feel more dependent, where I'm like, oh, I don't have a person. I need like an outlet. Like I'm very okay working through my issues and going through things and like brainstorming like by myself. I do always appreciate like another mind and hearing other things, but when I like start a project, I love just sitting alone and entering like a thought bubble, and I can just kind of float around in that.
I love that. That's very mature of you too. Like you don't see that too much, unfortunately. But I feel like I was like that too, just like the whole world you can build from like a rock, you know, and a stick. I like had siblings too, and we always had like we had a willow tree in our front yard, and like the willow tree like goes all the way to the ground. So we would like one of the branches was like a portal in our mind. So we like you run through the portal and then you're in like the fairy kingdom or something. It was a whole thing. It was so much fun, and like our parents are very much just like, yeah, go outside, and like we didn't have like technology for a long time, and I really appreciated that too. You mentioned that you're a big writer and that's like your creative outlet. Were you a big reader as well as anything? Do you have any like books you really value from your childhood?
Absolutely. I think there was like, what was it? I struggled with reading fluency a lot when I was in elementary school. So I was actually pulled out of my classes a lot to like practice reading. So for a while I did have like an aversion to reading, I think up until like maybe 4th grade or 5th grade, because then that was the first time my teacher was like, we're going to do like a reading long challenge and let's see if you can read like 30 books this month. And I was like, oh, like I want to beat this challenge. Like I can do this. But I went to my mom and I was like, oh, but mom, like I barely read and this is hard. And she was like, okay, well, like let's just pick a series. She's like, so even if you don't get 30, you have one series to work with. So she picked the Junie B. Jones series. And I just like fell in love with reading with that because all the words were like so much, like it was my first book that I read fully by myself. It took me, I think, 3 weeks to read the first book. And I think that book has 50 pages. Like I was reading definitely way below my grade level at that age. But then in a month, I read 30 books. And then the next month, I read another 30 books. And it was just kind of this, like, spiral of moving. So the Junie Jones, because of that, always have, like, a special place in my heart. But then moving forward, I would say I would just pick up random books here and there. I wasn't really, like, drawn to a specific author until I want to say it was, like, my freshman year of high school when we were at like the Scholastic Book Fair, and then I really like all the fairy tales, and Land of Stories came out, so I read that whole series, and that was a big moment. And then I was like, okay, I really like this series, like this like world building aspect. And then I was like into like the more like new aged at that time like books, and I wasn't really attached to the classics. Classics were just like what we had to read in school. And then that stereotypical thing that happens when like something in your life occurs and the book you're reading in your English class happens to be that perfect replica of it. I was like, oh my gosh. This is like that like archetypal moment where the book you're reading happens to apply to your life. I think the first time that happened was, what was it? What was the first book? I think it was The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, where he just kind of goes out, and it's interesting because the whole premise of this book, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but like it's obviously set in a very racist town, and he's choosing not to be racist. And because he knows that like it goes against society, he's like, well, I must leave. So he feels like he's ostracizing himself, but he's standing up for what he believes is right. And not to that like extent of what I was doing was nearly that important, but like I was on a soccer team, and there was this like groups of girls that were like very like, you had to have played travel with us or we like wouldn't play you and stuff like this. And I had to like leave soccer because I was like, well, if I think what you're doing is unjust and I think you're ruining the game of soccer, I'm gonna leave. But like that was the first moment when I was doing that, I was like, oh, that was like a little Huckleberry Finn-esque of me. And I got really into classics. So if we circle all the way to the back, we're now at present day, like The Great Gatsby. And the first time I ever read that was my junior year in high school, and I just fell in love with the writing. It is so rare that I ever read a line as enchanting as something that hasn't come from a Fitzgerald. It is so beautifully written. The prose, the landscaping, the metaphors, the way that he puts the human experience into words is so, like, I hate that I can't touch it. I hate that it's not tangible. I hate that it's just an idea that we possess. It makes me so sad when I think about it. But that book is so beautiful, so much to pull from. It was like one of the first books that like, I always like spoken class notes, had ideas about like digesting it, but I couldn't wait for like more information. Every time he would be like, oh, well, there's like a little history here. There's like a little more information, or like, this is like a part of American history that'll make this book make more sense for you. I was just like, this is it. And that is still one of my favorite books to date.
Yeah, and you're doing a whole research project on The Great Gatsby, but more how it relates to Zelda Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Why? Tell us about that.
So when we were like amidst that like whole when we were like talking about like the book in class my junior year, my teacher, it was in high school, sorry, Mr. Hayes was like,
there were no doctors in high school.
I was very used to I call everyone doctor just in case. I would hate to forget to add their doctorate. So Mr. Hayes, we were talking about it, and then we were like blah blah blah, and I was like, I was talking about Daisy, and he was like, yeah, Daisy's really cool, and he's like, you know, Daisy's a lot like Zelda, and I was like, well, who's Zelda? And he was like, oh, Fitzgerald's wife. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And he goes, yeah, and she wrote the book. Well, anyway, guys, let's look back on like task. And I was like, okay. And it was like an offhanded thing that just sat in the back of my mind. But I didn't put any thought into it because I was like, well, whatever. He's not paying attention to it. fast forward to my freshman year of college here, I was bumping into this girl named Avery Sestair. She's not in the honors program, but she was like thinking about it. We were talking about a bunch of books that we read and like classics that we read in high school. And we're like, oh, like she read Catcher in the Rye. I did, and I read like Ender's Game. And it's like we both read Huckleberry Finn. And then we get to Great Gatsby. And she's like, oh, I read it. And I was like, I read it too. And then almost at the same time, we were both like, oh, well, you didn't know Zelda wrote it. And then we were like, oh. And she goes, you think that too? And I was like, yes. So then we started brainstorming and doing all this research. Like we read an amazing bibliography on Zelda, Is Zelda by Nancy Milford, and Some Epic Sort of Grandeur by, what's his name, Matthew Brookley. He's like the main like Fitzgerald scholar. But we read all these books and we dug up all this history and we found out that Zelda put so much of her life and soul into that book and she didn't even know it. So there's this argument of like muse and like artist, whereas I think Fitzgerald truly did love Zelda, but he saw her as this like forever ending muse. Like it's just, there's so much of Zelda in it. Like direct diary quotes are in that book, like things that she wrote about her daily life and how she described things. And one of the famous quotes that Daisy says to Nick when she shows him, the daughter for the first time, and she goes, I hope she'll be a fool, a beautiful fool, because that's all a woman can be in this life. That's what Zelda said about herself, 2 years after marrying Fitzgerald. But my overall thesis after like reading all this and like rereading The Great Gatsby for like the 18th time, or whatever it was, I saw that Fitzgerald had taken Zelda and broken her into the three heroines of that story. Because Zelda is such a like diverse and interesting person. She has so many facets. She has a feminine like socialite side, which is the very pretty, delicate, rich girl, which we see in like Daisy. And then she has the masculine, sporty, she liked to wear pants, she liked to go to parties and drink beer and dance on the tables in a very masculine way. So that is what we see in like Jordan, where Jordan is masculine and she's still like cool and poised, but people don't gravitate to her as much. And she has a natural, like, lesser standing in society. And then Fitzgerald even makes Jordan, like, cheat in her book because he's showing his, like, disdain for that kind of personality trait. And then the final aspect is Myrtle, who is this, like, cheating, poor, lives in the Valley of Ashes woman, which we see in Zelda. Like, Zelda was not righteous in her relationship. Like, she frequently cheated on Fitzgerald, and he cheated on her as well, which we see in Myrtle because he put her as like the lowest status in the book, and he actually even killed that off. So you can see the reflection of Zelda's broken into these three tiers, and the way all those characters end in the book shows how Fitzgerald felt about all those aspects of Zelda. So my whole presentation is like showing that Zelda is so in tune and so within that book that she basically wrote it. She drew over 80 pictures of Gatsby because Fitzgerald couldn't picture what he looked like. So she just sat and drew for weeks on end, drawing all these different men of what he could possibly look like. And Zelda helped name the book, too.
Did it look like Leonardo DiCaprio?
I think it did a little bit, actually. It was a very, because I would say Leonardo DiCaprio has a slight, like, old money face. It was a very old money, kind of square jaw, but, like, slimish. Honestly, Leonardo DiCaprio in The Titanic is what it kind of looks like. And it did have, a little cropped her hair, but, like, the very, like, I don't know, army general reflection one.
That's kind of cool. That's crazy. I'm like processing.
I know. I'm sorry. That was a lot.
It's so fascinating. Moving. I was doing a little Wikipedia research, and it was like Zelda went through a lot, and she tried to like make a name for her own self as well. Like she tried publishing her own memoir, "Save Me the Waltz."
Yes,
that book none of it was so ever beautiful. Successful. It is. That's good.
Yeah, I read
she tried to write a play and then tried to get into oil painting. None of it was ever commercially successful. And then she got like diagnosed with schizophrenia and like all this suicidal and homicidal stuff later in her life.
And she was a ballerina too. And she was a really good ballerina actually.
Wow. That was good. Yeah, and she was like known as like the first American flapper.
Yeah, Fitzgerald coined her that. And then a week after he said that, she wrote a short story called The Eulogy of the Flapper, which was like the death of like the American dancer. And it was all about how women have this like small moment of like grace in American society, and only a man can give us like this like air of talent, because she so badly wanted to be a dancer. But when she would say it, everyone would be like, whatever, you're just a party girl, like you're not really a dancer, you don't want to get up there and like put on a show and tell a story through movement. But Fitzgerald gave her the American flapper, and then all of a sudden everyone would look at her. So immediately she was like, well, I don't want to be the first American flapper if I'm only that because my husband gave that to me.
Wow.
It was this moment of defiance and freedom, and she never made any money off of it. And Fitzgerald actually paid the printers to take it down, because she printed it under his name too, like with him, because he had the access to the publishing agency. But he was like, I need you to take that down. He's like, so that went away.
Is there any like crazy thing that you loved finding out about either history of like their relationship or something that was going on at the time with Zelda?
I'm trying to think of like what a good.
Because she's already so interesting and complex, and especially for like the 20s and the 30s, like, wow.
They were as like when you think of like a famous Hollywood couple right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to say any because I hate Hollywood couples. I really do. I hate the overpopulation of celebrities. But for better or worse, that like archetype, they were like the social group of New York in the 1920s. They were everywhere. They would party. Zelda, there's a famous moment where she comes into Times Square and she's in a yellow taxi cab, and Fitzgerald gets out and he goes into one of the hotels. I forget which hotel it is, and she gets out of the taxi and she gets on the roof of the taxi and there's music playing in the streets. So she starts dancing on the taxi and then jumps from the taxi into a nearby fountain and starts swimming around this fountain, just singing and dancing for people. And she like gathered this whole crowd.
Like in real life?
Yes.
This was not a chapter from The Great Gatsby.
No, that fully happened.
Wow.
And that's what I'm saying. There's so many reflections of Zelda did that, and it's clearly a reflection of her life that she said. There's so many interesting things about their relationship where I do believe they both truly loved each other, but I think they were both like two hot comets, and they were meant to be like a summer romance. I don't think it was meant to be a fruitful longevity marriage because they both, I don't know.
Especially in the context, like
Yes.
everything they were, the eyes on them and all that stuff. It was...
I think that's the perfect example of a couple that wanted to be so each other that it like was their detonation. Because if you look at it, they were both like the perfect foil of each other. Zelda had so much raw talent, like a way that she saw life that was just unlike anyone else. And she lived in a way that was a different like echelon that we can't even relate to. And Fitzgerald, just like Nick actually in The Great Gatsby, wanted so badly to be a part of that life. Like Zelda, before she met Scott, was this like Alabama socialite. Like she was a Southern belle. Everyone wanted her. Like when she would go to the Southern dances, all these men would line up and give her like gifts and like medals from war and stuff like this. She was already what Fitzgerald wanted. He wanted to be the in group because he grew up like in a richer off stance, but he wasn't like popular and he didn't have like a stand purpose in society. He had to like find it himself.
Okay. But that's literally the East Egg, West Egg dynamic. Wow, that's so interesting. So you consumed a lot of like the Fitzgerald literature from both Zelda and Scott. Has that influenced your own writing at all? You take inspiration from it, or like how you view life yourself?
I think it does both in the sense that it has definitely changed my writing because, what was it? They are both so beautiful metaphorical writers, and I love a deep, rich metaphor to describe something.
Yeah.
Because there's realism description, and then there's like, what was it? Affective matching, which is where I'm not going to tell you what's in this room. I'm only going to give you feelings, and you are going to feel it. You're going to see it. So realism is the very, like, when you think of, what's like a good example? Like Huckleberry Finn. Like the forest is there. He talks about how dark the forest is, and it's very thick woods. Versus the Great Gatsbys are like, the forest gathers around us like a sea of people I don't know. Like it's a different feeling. You get that anxious because of the likeness that he's like portraying to. So I think they inspired me more to be more like, I mean, one of my professors called it flowery language once. She was not a fan of metaphorical writing, but a lot of my other professors are. Like they love the way that I portray it, where I make it all in motion. I make this feel like a novel, even in critical analysis essays. So it definitely drove my like talk about it in a not straightforward way. It's okay to like kind of stretch it and make it an art piece and make it an experience. But also it has changed the way I see life because both of them saw beauty in everything. Nothing was simple for them. And I think it was, in the end, what kind of like was part of their downfall because they couldn't be serious. They couldn't come back to the world. But for the part where they were just like escaping above the universe, it was like, that's like the peak of life. Like I think if there's ever an American dream, Fitzgerald put it into words and he gave it all to us.
Well, it's good. So I imagine you're like, this is a great book to still be teaching in education.
Absolutely. It is the perfect example of like timeless because it still relates to everything.
That's good. I will say I like reading too. I'm an English major now. But when I read Great Gatsby in junior year of high school, like 2 hours spent talking about the green light. And I'm like, it's just a green light at the end of a dock. We've established the metaphor. It's just Daisy Buchanan, but like we kept getting into it and all this stuff. I was like,
Yeah, that's the money that he's
like,
also reaching for.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like, do you feel like all literature can be overanalyzed to a point of exhaustion?
Oh, absolutely. I think the stereotype of an English teacher being like, here's a floorboard. What does that mean? And then they pull out the most niche thing. I think sometimes when I sit there and I'm like holding the book in my hands and I try to picture what the author was doing, I'm like, I really think the author just wanted it to be a purple curtain. I don't think he picked purple because it's a branch of regalia from like Roman times. Like it's just a purple curtain because they thought it might look nice in their brown house. Like,
Yeah.
that's it.
Exactly. Like, especially doing my own writing, especially writing poetry, I'm like, I like write it and then someone points out how it's like a symbolism for all this stuff, and like, that's just what I thought of. It's not, didn't mean anything in my mind. So like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I just thought it was a good word.
Yeah.
I thought I'd use it.
It's just a good word. I love a good word choice. A good crisp word. Do you have a word that you love to say in your mouth? Because in theater, we have like delicious words.
Delicious.
Where's yours? Mine is crispy.
Crispy?
Crispy. That's my delicious word.
I don't know if I have like a... Because I stutter over a lot of my words.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a word that's really... I love verisimilitude. And it's a hard word to say, but I just love all the synonyms in it. And it just means like replicating life to its truest extent. But verisimilitude. I think it's very fun.
That's a good descriptor. Okay. Speaking of flowery language, or the more positive way of it, I was reading something of yours earlier. I'm going to share it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Around 4:15, I left the Smith Library to hick myself up to Norcross. After I ascended the short step of stairs, I went to push open the top door. After failing miserably because the door is low-key heavy and I scolded myself for my feeble nature, I went to Dr. Hedman's office. He is an extremely high-demand man, and I waited for about 2 minutes before we could start talking. We first discussed his citrus shirt in the seasons. We both agreed that fall is superior because loving the summertime is a mirage. After that, we discussed how much I fall, because spatial awareness just didn't develop for me. Since I now fall instead of trip, I'm officially an old lady, and I will be attending the early bird specials from now on. Then we did not plan how to pull off the greatest heist this campus has ever seen, and we did not talk about how to get into a certain $1 million room. As for the photo, we took it in the most scenic room possible. Boy and Girl Scouts unite because of peace and love. It's what Juliet Gordon Lowe would have wanted. Also, you're cool if you can spot the skull. For legal reasons, the heist comment was a joke and is not actually going to happen. It's a joke, Dr. Cubane. Furthermore, neither Dr. Hedman nor Csulak should be held accountable. This does not pertain to them.
Oh my God. I was like, when you started reading that, I was like, when did I write that? Oh, how do you have that?
I have been given access to the entire honors archive.
Dude, that's amazing.
So yeah, this is Sophia's freshman year Meet Your Professor challenge.
I don't even recognize the girl in that picture. That's insane. That's a different girl.
So cool. Yeah. Dr. Hedman, he's the same though. He's just...
Yeah. Oh, he's such
I have not
a
seen the
totem
citrus
pole.
shirt though. I've never seen that before.
guess
He
he
wears
has
the flamingo one a lot now.
I love flamingos. Greatest animal.
Really?
Favorite animal.
Favorite animal?
I think it's just because they're pink and they're fun and they just look like...
I was fascinated when I found out they can turn other colors if we just fed them something different.
Yeah. I love that they aren't born pink, that we make them pink. And I'm like, you're telling me out of nature, as it naturally occurs, they just happen to be pink because they happen to eat shrimp.
Yes.
I love it.
Ew, nature is so funny. Like I love those like SNL videos where it's like the creation of the universe and it's like, we need a 4-comp camel, and they're like, no, we want a pink bird that stands on one leg. Yes. And it's just so funny. Okay. So yeah, that's your throwback, lovely discussion of the past. So today, Charcoal Pony. I had Nate on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. We did not talk about pony because we got into a whole philosophical discussion about simulation theory. So I want to make sure I ask you about humor and Charcoal Pony. So first tell me how you enjoyed the Charcoal Pony experience, our improv group.
It is unlike anything else that I've ever done. I think when I did Charcoal Pony as a sophomore, I actually did it because of Nate. Nate, I remember the moment we were sitting in my room and I said something and he laughed and he looked at me and he was like, you're so funny. You should try it for Charcoal Pony. And I was like, Nate, me being funny and improv are not the same thing. Like, just because you laughed at like my dirty joke or whatever I said, it was probably a dirty joke. I was like, it doesn't automatically just allude to the fact that I should do Charcoal Pony. And he was like, no, I think you should. So I did it. And I had imposter syndrome up for like a whole year, the whole first year doing it. I had imposter syndrome. And then I remember, like, the first practice I left were, like, 4 ponies left after me. And they were like, you're so funny. I'm so glad you're here. And it was, like, just in passing, and they left. And I was like, this is my place. But charcoal pony is the only thing I've ever done, like, really that I can think of that didn't have any, like, direct help to my future. Like, all the other clubs that I'm in, all the other things that I do, I'm like, they are good and I do like them and I care about them. But I know that they are going to help for my direct work future. But charcoal pony I did purely for enjoyment. But those people in that club, because it's so tiny and so, like, reserved, I've never met a group of people that are so entertaining, that are so fascinating, and are so just loving and imaginative and sporadic as those people. Every single person that has gone through the group has, like, changed me for the better, or has, like, said something or adjusted me on some different path, even, like, just in passing, that I can never get back. Like, oh my gosh, like, those people are just...
So it seems like it does impact your future.
Absolutely.
It's making you a better person, hopefully.
It absolutely did. And it came really unexpected. I think I have a lot more confidence in the things that I say. And it also helped with my writing, which is something I didn't expect.
Really?
Because it stretched my creativity and my imagination.
Right.
Especially because, like, one of the first things we did was for, like, getting ideas going. There's idea A, idea B, and idea C. Or idea Z. That's what it is. So the first thing, like, if the first thing I say is flamingo and the second thing I say is pink, I basically jump all the way to the last thing I could say, and I might end up at, like, Italy. And if someone asks me, I have to explain how I got over there. But it's to help jump around and get your ideas moving and help you think outside of the box. And then when it comes to writing, I'm a lot more, like, creative and willing to take, like, writing risks because I'm, like, used to my brain stretching and working like that.
That was fun. Okay, so I have a very honors question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What, in your experience, based off all this, what is the value of humor? And how does it play a role in both psychology and English?
Humor, the interesting thing, especially when it comes to psychology, is one of those self-other traits, or, like, self-other judgment traits. Technically, no one themselves can admit that they're funny. I can't say that I'm funny because I can only be funny if other people find me funny. It's one of those other things. The same thing with, like, the quality of, like, charming. I can't say I'm charming because that's something I can only do to somebody else. So for psychology, it's we flock to people that make us laugh because laughing is so good for us and releases endorphins. So, like, humor is, like, the best way to make friends and the best way to connect with people. 9 times out of 10, the reason I make new friends is because I tell a joke and they laugh, or they tell a joke and I laugh. And that's just exactly how it starts. I will overhear them say something, or offhandedly I'll be like, oh, I'll start the conversation, and then I'll just toss out a joke. And if they don't laugh, I'm like, okay, then we'll just, like, we'll chat or whatever. But then eventually, if we start laughing, I'm like, okay, we're going to connect. It's going to be good. So that's, like, the benefit of psychology with, like, the humor. It's just such a good way to get people together. And in terms of, like, performing and, like, for Pony, I love, like, in Pony we always talk about, like, what our goal is. Like, is it to do improv for ourselves or to get other people to laugh? And depending on which Pony you ask, it differs. But I do think at the end of the day it's to get people to laugh. I think we love when people come to our shows, and even if they don't find maybe necessarily the jokes that we're intending to be funny, if they're just laughing at us because we're being ridiculous on stage and I'm, like, freaking out over something that's not real and I'm looking at my hands, there's nothing in it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the universe is breaking, and they think even that in itself is so ridiculous, it's just such a value to know that I'm letting people, like, relax and laugh and they don't have to put any effort into it. Like, when we perform and you laugh at it, there's not that shared, like, social norm of you have to laugh back, you have to add to the conversation, you have to do anything. You can just sit there and then take that and then leave. Or you can sit there and maybe not find us funny, but you can just sit and watch something and then get up and leave.
Yeah. And what about in English?
Oh, for English. English is, I think, more difficult when it comes to humor. I think it's one of the most harder things to convey because it's such, like, stagnant kind of humor. But in psychology and in improv, I can bend it around. I can read the room. I can see what kind of humor you like. Like, I change my humor styles and the jokes that I tell based off my audience. Like, I can tell, like, when I tell a joke to my mom, I don't tell her, like, a dirty joke or a more risque joke. But when I talk to my friends, I know the types of jokes that they like and the things that we pick at. So you can change with your audience, and that way I always know what I'm doing will most likely be funny. Once in a while, it's not. When it comes to English, it's so difficult to have that, like, the written comedy because you have to rely on so many different moving pieces. So I originally tried, the first time I ever wrote a funny piece, I had, like, everyone read it, and I was like, what part of it was funny? Because it was this whole satirical piece about this, like, woman who thought she had her life figured out. And basically in the end she gets murdered. But, like, she basically thought she had her whole life figured out. So she's very self-righteous throughout the whole thing, very, like, I know how the world works. And I can't tell you the title of the piece because there's a curse word in it, but the first 2 words are get got, and then there's another word after it, but I won't say that word. But I had everyone read it, and they were like, I didn't even know like when it started getting funny. It took me by surprise. They were like, I was reading it and I was just like existing through this like girl's like monologue and like letting her experience the whole thing. And then all of a sudden it just like took me by surprise. And I was like, what was it? And they said that it was just like the switching, like the substitution of things, which I know is like if you break down comedy to a formula, comedy is just when we substitute something for another thing. Like in Romeo and Juliet, if Romeo was calling out to like a Snickers bar and not Juliet, the whole play would be funny if the whole play is like he just really wants to eat a Snickers bar. And it's like the whole thing is just a candy bar. And then when he's like, oh no, someone else ate the candy bar. No, that was actually a fake wrapper. Your candy bar is still here. But now you left and now you're not going to eat. Like the whole thing can be played out like that. So English is still something I'm trying to come around with and convey within myself. But yeah, I don't know. I think humor is really hard to do in English, but in psychology and in life, I think people need to trust their humor more. They need to push their humor out more.
Oh, it was fun. It's interesting. I like to think I'm a funny writer, but I think it's more I'm a sarcastic, cringy writer. I just like very much. My writing is very much stream of consciousness, and I say something like, "Well, that's that, I guess." It's just very cringy. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like, you can't adapt your writing to the person. Like, you have to write what you think will be funny to your audience, and then just hope it lands. It's like for playwriting, where you're trying to write, there's a lot of comedy in most theater and shows. It's hard to like plan for that. And I know this as a scripted performer, and like you have lines. People laugh at different things every night. Like the show I'm in right now, Shakespeare, Much Ado About Nothing. People laugh at different things every night, and we're backstage, and we're like, why are they laughing at that? That's not a funny moment. So it's so interesting, and there's still I don't know how explained it all is in psychology. There's like still some aspects of like why we laugh and like why that's the sound we make, and like why everyone laughs is different. It's just so interesting, but so important.
Have you heard the thing that like laughing is like our fear response sometimes?
Yeah,
there's like a
like if you're uncomfortable, you laugh.
Yeah, you'll laugh. Like so sometimes it's a fear response, which I think is interesting because laughing is so like good for us and it like lets us like let go and like decompress. But yes. I think it's interesting that every time you do a show, people laugh at different parts. Because sometimes because I saw your show last night, just to clarify, I was in the audience. There was a part where I laughed and no one else did. And then I like looked around and I was like, oh, I guess it wasn't that funny. But like I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, if I think it's funny, I want them to know that I'm enjoying the show. So I don't mind if I'm the only person laughing.
Yeah. And this is part of why I enjoy performing more than watching theater. Like I actually hate watching shows and anything. Like that's why if I'm going to like a Charcoal Pony show, I want to like be working, like recording it. So I'm doing something else and not just watching it. I just hate, because like in theater, like I understand the full script. I know everything that is funny, and I think it's very funny. And there's so many jokes in the script that y'all are never gonna get because they're so niche and like subtle. Like my character, he says so many things incorrectly, but like most people don't get it because one, it's Shakespeare, and two, they're not well educated. But respectfully,
not well versed.
Yeah, and like they never laugh at it, but when I was first reading, it's like, dang, this is so funny. Like, this guy's such an idiot. So it's just so interesting. It's like, it's not perceived by everyone, but it's perceived by enough people, and hopefully it gets successful because of that.
Dogberry is so good. Your portrayal of Dogberry is amazing.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Anyway. Food in prison.
Food in prison culture.
Yeah. So, Sophia... So part of the honors program, we have a junior thesis year-long research project where you do it as part of a group. So the project we're about to talk about was with other people. She will probably say their names, and then we'll talk about it. But she presented this project at the Southern Regional Honors Conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 2025. And it was very cool, very interesting. So yeah, tell us about food culture and prison systems and its effect on mental health and recidivism.
Recidivism? That's one of the hard words, which is the likelihood that someone will reoffend. But yeah, so I did that project with Mahoney, Mahoney Sear, Julia Thaxton, and Lexi. I'm gonna say G because I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I don't know. I don't want to butcher it, but I did with 3 other women, and they were awesome. But basically, we had the idea that we know that food plays a role in our mindset and how we feel about ourselves, and then our mindset affects our behavior. And it all comes back to food and like overall mental health. So we understand that all those things kind of work independently, but we wanted to see where they all kind of center on. And then our idea was, well, we didn't want to, because we only had a year to do it, and we only had so many resources. So we were like, well, we want to center it on to like one group that we can kind of test this back and reflect on. So we picked the prison system because we were like, oh, like that's where you have a mandated food and it's easy to map out and like check and intake all the food that they're taking, versus if we picked a different group, it'd be like, oh, well, this is really fluctuating with like the food intake and stuff like that. The problem is when we picked the prison system group, that's a protected group, so you can't just survey them for no reason, especially because since their rights have been taken away where they are sanctioned to being in one place, it's very hard to get the rights to then go and run tests on them or have them take surveys, which makes sense. So they are a protected group. So our project had to change in that sense where we couldn't just like go in and like survey them and ask them a bunch of questions. So like that was about me. But instead we did all these documentaries where our original hypothesis was that the food that you eat will change your mindset, will change your behavior, and that will inevitably either lead you down a better path or a worse path. So we watched like all these different documentaries. We watched one called Seeds of Change, which is a documentary specifically about prison systems within America. And then we watched U.S. Toughest Prisons, which was a different episode, fully on the culture and the full system of different prisons around the world. And after we did that, we like did all this like triangulation and encoding about it. So we had, 12 different points, and each of those 12 points had different subsections. So it was like meal preparation, food satisfaction, like, and a list went on. It was very extensive. And then we all did like a few episodes each season where we did a triangulational study. So we all traded the things we were encoding for to make sure we were all seeing the same things, to like make sure our data was right. And then after that, we did like a tier system of 1 through 4, ranking all these different prisons on whether there was a bed, whether they had food, whether it was like food jealousy, whether there was overall satisfaction, whether it was like cleanliness, and it ranked all that way. And U.S. actually falls at 3, which means like inmates typically have a bed, they typically have safe housing, they typically have all their like immediate necessities met. But there might be a little bit of food jealousy, where like some inmates might have family members or other people like bring in food and stuff like that. But for 3, that's really good. But in, New Guinea, that was ranked a 1. That was one of the worst U.S. prison systems we looked at. It typically, if you picture like a dog yard, and this is just what it looks like, it basically is a fenced-in area with one metal like overlay or something like in the corner, and that was it. And inmates were not required to be fed, and once like a day, like the prison guards would come in and check to make sure they're just all in there, but that was it. They were in charge of making their own food, they were in charge of making their own beds. Most of them like hate each other, but they would just like sleep on top of each other to like maintain that warmth, and they would like catch rats and eat rats and stuff like that. And then no surprise, then after we did all that, we then did all this research on recidivism rates to see which prisons had less inmates reoffend. And reoffend just doesn't even mean like within the same crime that they were originally in there for. It just means they go back into the system at some point. And no surprise, all the prisons that were ranked like 3 and higher had much lower recidivism rates than the prisons that were worse. Like in New Guinea, they were interviewing one of the members of like the prisons, and they were like, well, why are you here? And he was like, oh, I just like stole stuff because my whole family's here. And they were like, what do you mean? New Guinea is a poorer country, so they also have less governmental aid to like regulate that they have food to feed to the prisons or the inmates. And he was like, well, I just committed a crime because my family's in here. He's like, also, like, I don't really have a house to stay at. And he's like, and even though this is no house either, but at least my family's here, so home is here. So he just didn't mind reoffending because he's like, this is my life. Versus there was a inmate in Norway who was actually in there for first-degree murder. And he's like a scary dude. But he, even when he was reflecting, he's like, I don't deserve what I'm in right now. Like, it looked like an apartment. It was a beautiful place. Amazing prison systems, easily a 4. He had his own kitchen. It was all steel, nice appliances. He had the freedom to get a job within the prisons. He had the freedom to go back and take a few classes if he wanted to. He had so much freedom and so much say in his life. And when they asked him about it, he would reflect and be like, I don't deserve this treatment, actually. He's like, this makes me want to be a better person because I'm seeing, like, what my life should look like if I choose good things, if I choose to take care of myself, if I choose to apply myself. So how food plays a role in that, too, is the middle prisons, like 2 and 3, where, like, they were guaranteed at least 1 meal a day. Also in the poorer countries, when they were like, well, if I can get food this way, I will go back and commit a crime because then I'll at least get food that way. So food was this starvational saving period, which again, those inmates would reoffend solely just so they could get a meal. Versus in like a 4-level prison, inmates took a lot of pride in like learning how to cook, learning how to go grow their own groceries. And when they got out and they were like, well, when you get out in like X number of years, what are you going to do? And a lot of them were like, oh, well, I want to keep growing food. I want to give back to my community. I want to be a farmer, or some of them picked up like different trades and they were like, I want to give back because I see the fruits of that labor and how good that is for me, that I am like a person who has talent and skill and can offer things to society. And I want my own life, and I want it outside of the prison system. I don't know. There's so much that goes into that project. But the final thing that we found was basically when you treat people well and you feed them well and you show them just the other half of anything else that they're looking at. Like once in a while there's certain things you can't overcome, and there's so many methodologies and reasons people do things that we'll never understand. But they are better people, and they want to be better people when they're fed well and they have that emotional like goodness of like having all the nutrients and having all the fats that we need every day makes our brain function better. It helps our brain retain information. Like there's the common thing that you need to eat to feed your brain has never been more true.
Yeah.
So.
What are you going to take away from that project as you pursue your career of like working in the legal system and maybe dealing with the prisons and all that stuff?
I think the two most important things that I want to take away are that I think we're really quick that someone actually asked me this question at, I think it was Mac at the conference. And he was like, if you have all this data, because it was me and these two other girls that were also doing different studies on prison systems. And they were like, if there's all this information, and if we treat inmates well and we offer them good food and we like help them rehabilitate, that they won't reoffend, why do we insist on treating them poorly? Why do we not care about giving them like the best chance? And I was like, it's because we have that obvious idea, the simplistic idea that if someone misbehaves, we don't reward that because we don't want it to re-happen. It's basic like behaviorism, where it's like, especially in operational conditioning, well, if you do something bad, I can like either give you a punishment, take away a punishment, or like give you a treat, take away a treat. So it's like if someone misbehaves, we don't want to automatically be like, oh, you went against our society. How about I give you a 5-star meal and a great place to stay? And when you say that, nobody wants to apply to it, even though we know that treating people worse will just make them also interact worse. Like, it's that cycle. So what I want to take away from that is, even when I'm in a tough spot where I'm like, what you did was wrong, or it goes against some institution or whatever it is, there's a level of grace that I want to maintain. That I think I always knew I wanted to maintain it, but it didn't hit me so clear in the face until I did that project. That it's, no matter what someone does, there's that level of decency and that level of genuineness that we need to offer people. And then the other broader thing, especially with the food part, is especially when I get really stressed and really busy, I'm very quick to just put food to the side, where I'm like, oh, well, I'll just like grab a sandwich in passing, or it's like, oh, okay, maybe I'll just like, maybe eat this, maybe I won't eat that, and I let food go out of the window. And it is so important that we maintain our diets, and that the thing is, at least eat one meal a day, set it aside for yourself 10 minutes, even if you have it, to just sit and eat by yourself. And when you eat by yourself, eat without technology, eat and sit with your thoughts, take yourself out to lunch, find out who you are. I find out who I am every time I eat alone with myself, and I make myself eat, and I make myself get out of my work. And I'm like, this is my person. My work is the extra extension of myself. But sit with yourself, sit with your thoughts, and I'll just sit at lunch, I'll look around, I'll think about what I do, and I find out who I am that way.
Oh, that's great. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I have one last question for you that is a tradition on the podcast. So I have a tradition where the last guest has written a question for you to answer, and then you'll have an opportunity to leave a question for the next guest.
Oh, awesome.
Keeps us all connected. Okay.
Do I get to know who the next guest is, or?
No, and you won't get to know who the previous one is either. So the previous guest wants to ask you, what is one moment/memory from your time here at High Point that you'd like to repeat?
Ooh, that I can relive. I've had so many that, like, you have this moment where, like, life almost stops and it gets still, because I'm looking around, I'm like, there's no way that just happened.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And what was it? Oh, I'm trying to think of, like, one that was, like, this is very small, but it's the one I was just recently thinking. I have so many, but this is one that I'm pulling at. It was when I was a freshman, and I was living with this girl, Laura Serafina. She's also in the honors program. And I was really nervous about, like, sharing a room, like, that close with a girl. So only in the sense that I always grew up with boys. But I was used to sharing things. But I was like, oh, like, I've never had to share my room, though. Like, I hope we work well together. I was very, like, the common anxious of sharing a room in college. And I kept going to my dad about it. I was like, Dad, well, how do I do this? What do I do? And I was like, I don't know what to do. He's like, well, just talk about things. He's like, just throw things out there and see what she says. And I was like, whatever she says, let her have her opinion. He's like, don't immediately try to, like, put yours on it. Let her speak in her clear form. Let her have that space so it feels like a shared space. It doesn't feel like you're making her come into your space and you're not going into her space. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Good advice. So we did that. And we would awkwardly get lunch together once in a while. And we'd awkwardly be like, well, what's your class? Oh, what movies do you like? And I was like, oh, like that's just, I was connecting with people like outside of my dorm room like more. Like I was like connecting with people in my classes because we had like a different reason for hanging out. But her and I was just, we're here. So there was no predestined like conversation thing. And then one night, my TV was on and I was like going through the channels and she was like, do you want to watch like the Hannah Montana movie? And it was, I think, like a Tuesday and it was already like 10. And I was like, sure. So we put on this movie and we just start like laughing out of control about everything about this movie because we don't remember like how funny it was and how ridiculous that like Miley Cyrus comedy is. And we kept teasing some of the characters to be like, oh, of course she's just like on a roof right now. Like that's so Disney, like that this is the thing. And then after that ended, we put on the last song. So we had like a double feature that night. And we stayed up until 3 a.m. just like laughing. Like we laughed so loud, I think we fell out of our chairs. And I was laying on the floor and we just kept laughing about it. And then she was like, oh my gosh, I have to get up for like class in like 2 hours or whatever it was. And she was like, this is so crazy. But then I looked at her when she was laughing and I was like, this made it okay that we were going to be friends. I was like, I get it now, which comes back to the humor thing.
The laughter.
I literally was like, I was so nervous that we would never fully connect that I felt like I was like, well, what if we're just coworkers for the next like year? And then I was like, oh, well, like this will stink, but like it's okay. But when we laughed, I was like, it's going to be okay. And I'm able to make friends. I'm able to restart and I'm able to connect with people. So that exact moment was like the moment that I was like, college will be okay.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's nice. That's a really good anecdote.
Yeah.
Very English of you.
But,
all right. I'll pass this over to you.
okay.
You get to choose your color. I've got those
Ooh.
fun pens, and then you can kind of just write it down there.